The first thing you need to know about my mother is that she showed up to my grandmother's funeral wearing a red dress cut so low that half the congregation spent more time staring at her cleavage than listening to the eulogy. My name is Valeria, and I've been planning this funeral for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of choosing flowers, writing obituaries, and fielding condolence calls from neighbors who knew my grandmother better than her own daughter ever did. Grandma Cecilia raised me from the time I was 7 until I moved out for college. She was my mother, my father, my everything. The woman in the red dress? She was just the person who gave birth to me and then decided parenting was too inconvenient for her lifestyle. Valeria, honey, I'm so sorry for your loss. Mrs. Patterson from down the street squeezed my hand as we stood outside the church. Your grandmother was such a wonderful woman. She talked about you constantly. I managed to smile. Thank you. She loved this neighborhood. Unlike some people, Mrs. Patterson muttered, glancing toward the parking lot where Vanessa was climbing out of a beat-up sedan with a man I'd never seen before. Showing up dressed like that, at her own mother's funeral. The man had slicked back hair and wore a suit that looked expensive but somehow cheap at the same time. He kept his hand on Vanessa's lower back as they walked toward us, and I could see him scanning the crowd like he was evaluating everyone's net worth. Valeria! Vanessa's voice carried across the parking lot, artificially bright and loud enough for everyone to hear. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was just terrible. She hadn't called me in 6 months. Not once during Grandma's illness, not when I left voicemails about the diagnosis, not even when I texted her the date and time of the funeral. But here she was, arms outstretched like we were long-lost best friends. Hello, Vanessa. I didn't move toward her. Let her come to me. She wrapped me in a hug that reeked of cigarettes and cheap perfume. I can't believe she's gone. I just can't believe it. The man behind her cleared his throat. This is Xavier, Vanessa said, pulling back with tears that appeared and disappeared too quickly to be real. He's been such a support system for me during this difficult time. Xavier extended his hand. Sorry for your loss. Vanessa's told me so much about you. I shook his hand briefly. His grip was too firm, too long. Funny, she's never mentioned you. Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced. Well, we've been keeping things private. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I didn't know anything about Vanessa's life because she'd made sure of that, but I nodded anyway because we were standing outside a church and my grandmother's body was inside waiting to be buried. The service was beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about Grandma's volunteer work at the food bank, her famous apple pies, the way she never missed a single one of my school plays or soccer games. I read a poem she'd written in one of her journals. Emily, my cousin, flew in from Portland and gave a speech about summer visits and Grandma's terrible jokes. Vanessa sat in the front row and sobbed loudly, dramatically. Every few minutes she'd let out a wail that made people turn around. Xavier rubbed her back and whispered things in her ear that made her nod and cry harder. I wanted to scream. After we lowered the casket into the ground and people started heading to their cars, Vanessa appeared at my elbow. The tears had dried up completely. We need to talk, she said. About what? About the house, about what happens now. I stared at her. What happens now is I go home and grieve my grandmother. What happens now is you disappear for another 6 years. Don't be dramatic, Valeria. I know you're upset, but we're family. We need to stick together. Xavier had wandered over to Emily and was asking her questions about her job, her apartment, whether she was married. Emily looked uncomfortable. We've never been family, I said. Grandma was my family. You were just someone who showed up when it was convenient. Vanessa's expression shifted. The fake sympathy melted away, replaced by something colder. She always loved you more, but love doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. She walked away before I could respond, clicking across the cemetery in heels that were completely inappropriate for grass. Xavier followed her, but not before turning back to give me a smile that made my skin crawl. I stood there watching them drive away, and I knew this wasn't over. Whatever Vanessa was planning, whatever she meant about bills and sticking together, it wasn't going to be good. I just had no idea how bad it was going to get. 1 week after the funeral, I drove to Grandma's house to start going through her things. I had my key ready, a box of tissues in my purse, and a mental list of what needed to be done. Sort through clothes for donation, pack up photo albums, figure out what to do with 50 years' worth of collected memories. What I found instead was an empty house with a sold sign stabbed into the front lawn. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at that sign. The red letters seemed to pulse in the afternoon sun. Sold. Cash offer. Quick close. There was a phone number at the bottom and a real estate agent's smiling face on a small placard. My hands shook as I dialed the number. Henderson Realty, this is Mike speaking. Hi, I'm calling about the house on Maple Street, the one with the sold sign? Oh, great property, just closed yesterday. Cash buyer, no inspection needed, smoothest transaction I've had all year. Who sold it? Well, I can't give out personal information, but the seller was very motivated. Needed to liquidate quickly due to a family situation. I gripped the phone tighter. What was the seller's name? I really can't. My name is Valeria. Valeria Emerson. That house belonged to my grandmother who died last week. There was a pause. Oh, I see. Well, according to my paperwork, the seller was also Valeria Emerson. Are you saying there's some kind of identity issue here? The world tilted sideways. Someone used my name? Ma'am, I think you need to come into the office. Can you be here in an hour? I was there in 20 minutes. Mike Henderson looked exactly like his photo on the sign. Overly enthusiastic smile, too much hair gel, suit that was trying too hard. He spread the paperwork across his desk like he was dealing cards. Here's the thing, he said, pointing to a signature I'd never seen before. This is definitely not your signature, is it? I stared at the scrawled Valeria Emerson at the bottom of the purchase agreement. No. That's not mine. And this driver's license copy. He slid another paper toward me. It was a photocopy of a license with my name on it, but the photo was definitely not me. The woman in the picture had bleached blonde hair and was at least 20 years older. That's my mother, I whispered. Your mother used your name to sell your grandmother's house? Apparently. Mike leaned back in his chair. Well, this is a first for me. Usually, when people commit real estate fraud, they at least try to be subtle about it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hope you enjoyed your little visit to the house. Don't bother calling the police. I have power of attorney. V. I showed Mike the text. He whistled low. She's got power of attorney? Not from me, she doesn't. From your grandmother? I thought about it. Grandma had been sharp right up until the end. She'd never mentioned giving Vanessa power of attorney. She'd barely mentioned Vanessa at all, except to say she hoped someday her daughter would find her way back to what matters. I need to see those documents, I said. Mike made some calls. 20 minutes later, he had copies of everything. Power of attorney forms, signed 2 days after the funeral. Medical records claiming Grandma had been incompetent for months. A will that left everything to Vanessa. None of it looked right. The signatures were wrong, the dates were suspicious, and the medical records came from a doctor I'd never heard of. Mike, I said, how much did the house sell for? He checked his paperwork. $712,000. I felt sick. That house was worth every penny of it, maybe more. It was in the best neighborhood in town, fully renovated, with original hardwood floors and a garden that had been featured in the local newspaper. Grandma had spent decades making it perfect. Where's the money? Wired to the seller's account yesterday morning. My phone rang. Vanessa. Hello, sweetheart. she said when I answered. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. I heard you went to see Mike today. How was that? You stole my house. I didn't steal anything. I inherited it. There's a difference. Grandma left that house to me, you know she did. Vanessa laughed. Prove it. Oh wait, you can't. Because the will says otherwise. Because the power of attorney says otherwise. Because every legal document in existence says that house belonged to me. Those documents are fake. Are they? That's a pretty serious accusation, Valeria. You better be careful about throwing around words like fake and fraud. People might think you're just a bitter granddaughter who can't accept that Grandma changed her mind. I could hear Xavier's voice in the background, saying something I couldn't make out. The thing is, Vanessa continued, you never deserved her love anyway. All those years she spent raising you, all that money she could have been spending on herself, all that attention you soaked up like a little sponge. I'm just collecting interest. The line went dead. Mike was staring at me. That didn't sound good. No, I said, folding up the paperwork and putting it in my purse. It didn't. But as I walked to my car, something Grandma used to say kept echoing in my head. Honey, the best revenge is living well. But sometimes, the second best revenge is making sure the other person doesn't. I called Leighton from my car in the parking lot of Henderson Realty. We'd been roommates at State, and he was the only person I knew who'd gone to law school and actually enjoyed it. Last I heard, he was working at some fancy firm downtown specializing in real estate law. Valeria? Holy shit, I haven't heard from you in forever. How are you? I need a lawyer. Like, immediately. What happened? My mother just sold my house using my name and a fake ID. There was a pause. Come again? Can you meet me somewhere? I have all the paperwork. I'm leaving the office now. Coffee shop on 5th Street in 20 minutes? Leighton looked exactly the same as he had in college, just in a better suit. He ordered us both coffee and spread the documents across a corner table like he was preparing for battle. Okay, walk me through this, he said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. I told him everything. Grandma's death, the funeral, finding the sold sign, the fake documents, Vanessa's phone call. He took notes and asked questions, occasionally muttering things like, unbelievable and, are you kidding me? When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. This is either the stupidest crime I've ever seen or your mother is way smarter than she appears. What do you mean? Well, the fake ID thing is amateur hour. Any decent investigation would catch that immediately. But he flipped through the papers. These power of attorney documents are pretty sophisticated. The medical records look official. Someone put real effort into this. So what can we do? Leighton grinned. Oh, we can do a lot. But first, I need to check something. He pulled out his laptop and started typing. What was your grandmother's full name? Cecilia Marie Emerson. More typing. Then his eyebrows shot up. Holy shit. What? Valeria, when did your grandmother add you to the deed? Add me to what deed? The property deed. You're listed as joint owner with rights of survivorship. Has been for... He scrolled down. 3 years. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means your grandmother made you co-owner of the house 3 years ago, which means your mother couldn't legally sell it without your signature, which means this entire sale is void. Are you serious? Dead serious. Look. He turned the laptop toward me. There it was in black and white. Cecilia Marie Emerson and Valeria Rose Emerson, joint tenants with full rights of survivorship. But I never signed anything. You didn't need to. She could add you unilaterally, as long as she retained ownership interest. It's actually pretty common for elderly people to do this to avoid probate. I felt dizzy. So the sale is illegal? Completely. Your mother had no legal right to sell that property. The buyer's going to be pissed. The title company is going to have a heart attack, and your mother is going to be in some serious legal trouble. What about the money? Leighton's grin got wider. That's the best part. Since the sale was fraudulent, the money has to be returned to the buyer. But here's the thing. It was probably already transferred out of your mother's account. So now she owes $700,000 to someone who's going to be very, very angry. My phone buzzed. Another text from Vanessa. Stop digging around or you'll regret it. I showed Leighton the message. She's threatening me now. Screenshot that. We'll need it for the police report. Police report? Valeria, your mother committed wire fraud, identity theft, and real estate fraud. This isn't a civil matter anymore. This is criminal. I sat back in my chair trying to process everything. How long will it take to reverse the sale? With evidence this clear, I can have an emergency injunction filed by tomorrow morning. The title company will freeze everything pending investigation. Your mother's accounts will be frozen too, if there's anything left in them. And then what? Then we sue for damages, file criminal complaints, and watch your mother's world fall apart. He closed his laptop. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your mother is going to face serious jail time. I thought about Grandma's funeral, about Vanessa showing up in that red dress with her sleazy boyfriend. I thought about all the birthdays she missed, all the school plays she skipped, all the times Grandma made excuses for why Mommy couldn't come home for Christmas. She made her choice, I said. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Leighton nodded. All right then, let's destroy her. He started packing up the papers. One more thing. Don't contact your mother. Don't respond to her texts. Don't give her any warning about what's coming. The element of surprise is our biggest advantage right now. What if she tries to move more money around? Too late. I'm calling the title company as soon as I get back to the office. By tomorrow morning, every penny from that sale will be locked down tighter than Fort Knox. As we walked to our cars, Leighton turned to me. Your grandmother was a smart woman. Adding you to that deed probably saved your inheritance. She always said she was planning 2 moves ahead. Well, she just checkmated your mother from beyond the grave. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Vanessa thought she'd won. She thought she'd outsmarted everyone and gotten away with the perfect crime. She had no idea what was coming. That evening, I called Emily. We hadn't talked much since she moved to Portland 5 years ago, but she'd flown back for the funeral and given me her new number. I needed someone who understood the family dynamics, someone who knew Vanessa's history. Valeria? Is everything okay? Emily, I need to ask you something. Why did you stop coming to family gatherings? There was a long pause. That's a loaded question. I know, but I need to understand what happened between you and Vanessa. Can we meet somewhere? This isn't really a phone conversation. An hour later, we were sitting in a 24-hour diner downtown. Emily looked tired, but she'd agreed to drive over from her hotel. She ordered coffee and stared at it for a long time before speaking. It was about 4 years ago, she said finally. I came to visit Grandma for her birthday. You were at work, I think. Anyway, Vanessa showed up out of nowhere with some guy I'd never seen before. Not Xavier? No, this was before Xavier, some other loser. They were clearly high on something, and they started going through Grandma's jewelry box right in front of me. I felt my stomach drop. What did you do? I told them to stop. Vanessa laughed and said Grandma had given her permission to borrow some pieces. The guy was stuffing necklaces into his pockets like he was at a garage sale. Did you tell Grandma? Emily nodded. She came downstairs and saw what was happening. I've never seen her so angry. She told Vanessa to put everything back and get out. Vanessa started screaming about how it was her inheritance anyway, how Grandma loved you more than her own daughter. What happened to the jewelry? That's the thing. Grandma made them empty their pockets, but I'm pretty sure they'd already stashed some stuff in their car. A few pieces went missing that day. Grandma never said anything about it, but I could tell she was heartbroken. I remembered Grandma mentioning that some of her jewelry had been misplaced, but she'd brushed it off when I offered to help look for it. Why didn't you tell me? Grandma asked me not to. She said you had enough to worry about with school and work, and she didn't want Vanessa's problems to become your problems. Emily stirred her coffee absently. But after that day, I couldn't stand to be in the same room as Vanessa. Every family gathering became this tense nightmare where I was waiting for her to show up and cause drama. So you just stopped coming. I stopped coming. And I regret it now, because it meant I saw less of Grandma, too. Emily's voice cracked slightly. You weren't the only one she abandoned, Valeria. You were just the one she left behind. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Speaking of things I should have told you earlier, she said, sliding the envelope across the table. Grandma gave me this about 6 months ago. She made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to her. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter in Grandma's careful handwriting and a small brass key. Dearest Valeria, the letter began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and Emily has kept her promise. I hope you can forgive an old woman for her secrets, but there are things you need to know about your mother. I looked up at Emily. Did you read this? No. She sealed it in front of me and made me swear I wouldn't open it. I continued reading. Your mother has always been troubled, but in recent years, her behavior has become more concerning. She has asked me repeatedly about my will, about the house, about what will happen when I'm gone. I fear she sees my death as a financial opportunity rather than a loss. The letter went on to describe Vanessa's increasingly frequent visits, always accompanied by different men, always ending with requests for money or loans that were never repaid. I have taken steps to protect you and your inheritance, the letter continued. The key in this envelope opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Box number 247. Inside, you will find documents that prove your legal ownership of the house, as well as evidence of your mother's past attempts to access my accounts. I held up the key. It was small and brass with 247 etched into it. There's more, Emily said quietly. I kept reading. I have also recorded several conversations with your mother where she explicitly states her intention to contest my will and claim the house for herself. These recordings are in the safety deposit box along with photographs of the jewelry she stole 4 years ago. My hands were shaking now. She knew. She knew Vanessa was planning this. There's one more thing, Emily said. The last time I talked to Grandma, about 2 weeks before she died, she said something strange. She said, if Vanessa ever comes for what isn't hers, make sure she leaves with less than nothing. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope along with the key. Emily, I need to tell you something. Vanessa sold the house, used my name and a fake ID. Emily's eyes widened. Are you serious? Dead serious. But here's the thing, I'm going to get it back. And when I do, Vanessa is going to pay for every selfish thing she's ever done. What do you need me to do? I smiled. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the bank. The next morning, Emily and I met at First National Bank at exactly 9 a.m. when they opened. I had Grandma's letter, the key, and my ID. The bank manager, a woman named Patricia, led us to the safety deposit box room after verifying my identity against their records. Your grandmother was very specific about the access instructions, Patricia said, inserting her master key alongside mine. She updated the paperwork just 2 months ago to ensure you were the sole authorized user. The box was larger than I'd expected. Inside were manila folders, a small digital recorder, and a jewelry pouch that made my heart ache. I recognized the pieces immediately. Grandma's pearl necklace, her wedding ring, the sapphire earrings she wore to church every Sunday. She saved them, Emily whispered, touching the jewelry gently. I opened the first folder. property deeds, insurance documents, and a copy of Grandma's real will, not the fake one Vanessa had produced. Everything was notarized and witnessed, with dates going back 3 years. The second folder contained photographs, Vanessa and various men going through Grandma's house, taken from what looked like a hidden camera. Timestamps showed they were from different visits over the past 2 years. In several photos, you could clearly see them pocketing items. Jesus, Emily said, looking over my shoulder. She was documenting everything. The digital recorder had dozens of files. I played the first one. Grandma's voice filled the small room. This is Cecilia Emerson, recording a conversation with my daughter Vanessa on March 15th. Vanessa, can you repeat what you just told me about the house? Vanessa's voice came through clearly. Mom, I'm just saying, when you're gone, I'll need to sell this place. It's too big for Valeria anyway, and the money would be better used for practical things. What kind of practical things? Well, Xavier has some business opportunities that need funding, and I have debts that need to be handled. It's not like Valeria needs a whole house to herself. There were more recordings. Vanessa asking about bank account numbers, demanding to know the location of important documents, even suggesting that Grandma was getting confused and should let Vanessa handle her finances. I played one more file, dated just 3 weeks before Grandma died. Vanessa, I need you to understand something. Grandma's voice was firm. This house belongs to Valeria. It has belonged to her for 3 years. If you try to take it from her, you will face consequences. What consequences? You'll be dead, Mom. Dead people don't enforce consequences. Won't they? The recording ended there. Emily and I sat in silence for a moment. Then I called Leighton. I have everything we need, I said when he answered. Recordings, photographs, documents. Grandma documented years of attempted fraud. Bring it all to my office. I'll file the emergency injunction today. How long before the sale gets reversed? With this evidence, by close of business. The title company is going to move fast once they see this. Nobody wants to be holding the bag on a fraudulent transaction. After we left the bank, Emily and I drove to Leighton's office. He reviewed everything with the focused intensity of a surgeon, occasionally muttering legal terms I didn't understand. This is incredible, he said finally. Your grandmother basically built an airtight case against your mother. These recordings alone are enough to prove intent to commit fraud. What happens next? I file the injunction, the sale gets voided, and the money gets frozen pending investigation. Your mother is going to get a very unpleasant phone call from some very angry people. How angry? Leighton grinned. Well, the buyer paid cash and was expecting to close on their dream house next week. The title company is going to have to explain why they facilitated a fraudulent sale. And your mother is going to have to explain where $700,000 went. What if she already spent it? Then she's going to have to find a way to pay it back, with interest, and penalties, and legal fees. He started gathering the documents. I can have this filed within the hour. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Closing went smoothly. Thanks for not interfering. V. I showed the text to Leighton and Emily. She thinks she won, Emily said. She has no idea what's coming, Leighton added. In about 3 hours, her bank is going to freeze her accounts and demand immediate repayment of funds obtained through fraud. What should I do in the meantime? Nothing. Go home, relax, and wait for the fireworks to start. But I couldn't relax. I drove to a coffee shop and sat by the window, watching people go about their normal lives while my world was about to explode. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Valeria. It was Xavier, and he sounded panicked. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Listen to me very carefully. Your mother is about to do something very stupid, and you need to stop her. What are you talking about? The bank called. They're reversing the sale. They want their money back immediately. Vanessa is talking about running. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. That sounds like a Vanessa problem. It's going to become your problem if she disappears and leaves you holding the legal mess. Xavier, I have one thing to say to you. Tell Vanessa that Grandma always planned 2 moves ahead. I hung up and immediately called Leighton. It's working, I said. They're panicking. Good. By tomorrow morning, your house will be back in your name and your mother will be facing criminal charges. I sat back in my chair and smiled. For the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe again. At 6:30 the next morning, someone started pounding on my apartment door like they were trying to break it down. Bang, bang, bang. Valeria, open this door right now! I knew that voice. I'd been hearing it scream at me since I was 7 years old. Bang, bang, bang. I know you're in there, open up. I made coffee first. Let her wait. Let her scream. Let the neighbors hear exactly what kind of person Vanessa really was. The pounding continued for 5 more minutes, then stopped. I heard muffled sobbing through the door. Please, Valeria, please open the door. I just want to talk. Now she wanted to talk. Now she was saying please. I walked to the door but didn't open it. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to explain. There's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You committed fraud. You stole my house. It wasn't stealing. I had power of attorney. Fake power of attorney. With forged signatures. The crying stopped abruptly. Who told you that? Does it matter? Open this goddamn door! And there was the real Vanessa. I opened the door slowly, keeping the chain lock engaged so she could only see part of my face. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. No Xavier in sight. Where's your boyfriend? He left. Took his car and disappeared in the middle of the night. Her voice cracked. The bank froze everything, Valeria. Everything. My checking account, my savings, even my credit cards. They want $700,000 that I don't have. That's unfortunate. You did this. You and whatever lawyer you hired. You sabotaged the sale. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Grandma's letter, the one from the safety deposit box. I unfolded it and held it up so she could see it through the gap in the door. Grandma knew exactly what you were planning. She wrote this 6 months ago. Vanessa's face went white. What is that? Instructions. For what to do if you ever tried to steal from me. I started reading aloud. If she ever comes for what isn't hers, make sure she leaves with less than nothing. That's not... She wouldn't... She recorded your conversations, Vanessa. Every single one. Every time you asked about the house, every time you demanded money, every time you suggested she was too old to handle her own finances. Vanessa grabbed the doorframe. You're lying. March 15th. You told her the house was too big for me, and that Xavier had business opportunities that needed funding. April 3rd. You said she was getting confused and should let you handle her bank accounts. May 20th. You told her dead people don't enforce consequences. With each date, Vanessa's face got paler. She also photographed you stealing her jewelry multiple times with different men. Those weren't stolen. She gave them to me. Funny thing about photographs, they're time-stamped, and the times show you taking things when she wasn't even in the room. Vanessa started crying again, but these weren't the fake tears from the funeral. These were desperate, panicked sobs. Valeria, please. I'm your mother. We can work this out. We can share the house, or sell it and split the money. I'll pay you back somehow. You're not my mother. You're the woman who gave birth to me and then abandoned me. There's a difference. I made mistakes, okay? I was young and stupid and I wasn't ready to be a parent. But I'm here now. I'm trying to make things right. By committing fraud? By stealing my inheritance? By using my name without permission? I was desperate. I owe people money, serious money. The kind of people who don't accept payment plans. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That sounds like a you problem. They're going to hurt me, Valeria. These aren't credit card companies or student loan people. These are dangerous people who lent money to Xavier, and now he's gone and they're coming after me. Then you should probably call the police. The police? I can't call the police. I just committed fraud. Yes, you did. My phone started ringing. I could see through the gap that there were cars pulling up outside. Official-looking cars. Looks like you won't have to call them after all, I said. Vanessa spun around and saw the police cars. 2 officers were getting out, along with someone in a suit who was probably a detective. You called them, she whispered. I didn't have to. Banks are required to report fraud. Title companies are required to report fraud. You made this mess, Vanessa. Now you get to clean it up. The officers were walking up the stairs now. One of them was carrying what looked like an arrest warrant. Valeria, please, I'm begging you. Don't let them arrest me. I'll do anything. I closed the door, undid the chain lock, and opened it all the way. Vanessa stumbled backward as the officers approached. Vanessa Emerson? The detective asked. That's her, I said. As they read her rights, Vanessa looked at me one last time. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. They put her in handcuffs and led her down the stairs. I watched from my doorway as they drove away, then closed the door and finished my coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from Leighton. House is back in your name. Keys available at title company. Congratulations. I smiled and started getting dressed. I had a house to reclaim. 2 days later, Emily and I were sitting in my car outside the community center where the monthly neighborhood association meeting was being held. Grandma had been a regular attendee for 20 years, always volunteering for committees and organizing fundraisers. Are you sure about this? Emily asked. She made it public when she sold the house. Now the resolution gets to be public too. We walked into the meeting just as Mrs. Patterson was calling it to order. About 30 people were scattered around folding chairs, mostly older residents who'd known Grandma well. I recognized most of them from the funeral. Before we start tonight's agenda, Mrs. Patterson said, I think we should address the elephant in the room. I'm sure many of you have heard about the situation with Cecilia's house. Murmurs rippled through the room. I stood up. Actually, I'd like to speak about that, if that's okay. Mrs. Patterson nodded. Of course, dear. Please, come up front. I walked to the front of the room, my hands shaking slightly. For those who don't know me, I'm Valeria. Cecilia was my grandmother, and she raised me from the time I was 7. We know who you are, honey, called out Mr. Rodriguez from the back. Your grandmother talked about you constantly. That got a few chuckles and made me feel slightly less nervous. 2 weeks ago, my mother sold Grandma's house using forged documents and a fake ID with my name on it. She stole $700,000 and disappeared. The room went completely silent. Yesterday, she was arrested for wire fraud, identity theft, and real estate fraud. The house has been returned to me, and I wanted you all to know because this neighborhood meant everything to my grandmother. Mrs. Patterson stood up. Valeria, we had no idea it was that serious. We knew something was wrong when we saw strangers going through the house, but we thought maybe it was legitimate. It wasn't, and I want to make sure something like this never happens to anyone else's family. I pulled out a check from my purse. Grandma always donated to the Neighborhood Watch program and the community garden. I'd like to make a donation of $50,000 to establish a neighborhood safety fund, and I'd like to name it after her. The room erupted in surprised murmurs and applause. That's incredibly generous, Mrs. Patterson said. But are you sure? That's a substantial amount. I'm sure. Grandma would have wanted her money to help protect other families. After the meeting, people came up to shake my hand and share stories about Grandma. Mrs. Patterson pulled me aside. "There's something you should know," she said quietly. "Your mother came by here about a month ago, asking questions about your grandmother's finances. She wanted to know if Cecilia had mentioned having money troubles or needing help with bills." "What did you tell her?" "We told her the truth, that your grandmother was financially stable and sharp as a tack. But she kept pushing, saying she was worried about Cecilia's mental state. She was building a case, trying to establish that Grandma was incompetent." Mrs. Patterson nodded grimly. Several of us compared notes afterward. We all got the same feeling that she was fishing for information she could use somehow. As Emily and I walked to the car, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Valeria?" The voice was male, unfamiliar. "Who's asking?" "My name is Detective Rodriguez. I'm investigating your mother's case. We need to talk." "About what?" "We arrested Xavier this morning." "He's been very talkative about your mother's activities. Turns out this wasn't her first time committing fraud." Emily and I exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" "Can you come to the station tomorrow morning? There are some things you need to know about your mother's history." The next morning, Detective Rodriguez spread a file across his desk that was thicker than a phone book. "Your mother has been running real estate scams for the past 5 years," he said. "Always with a different boyfriend, always targeting elderly family members or family friends." "Are you serious?" "Xavier gave us everything. Bank records, fake documents, even recordings of phone calls where they planned the whole thing." He flipped through pages of evidence. "She's done this to at least 6 other families. Your grandmother's house was just the biggest score." Emily leaned forward. "What happens now?" "She's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." "Wire fraud across state lines, elder abuse, identity theft. The charges keep piling up." "And Xavier?" "He's cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. Apparently your mother promised him a cut of the money from your grandmother's house, but she was planning to disappear with all of it." Detective Rodriguez closed the file. "There's one more thing. We found evidence that your mother was planning to contest your grandmother's will even before she died. She had already hired a lawyer and was preparing to claim mental incompetence. But Grandma was completely sharp. We know that now. Your grandmother's recordings and documentation saved not just your inheritance, but probably prevented your mother from successfully challenging the will in court." As we left the police station, Emily shook her head. She really thought she could get away with it. She almost did, if Grandma hadn't been so thorough. But she was. She protected you even after she was gone. That evening, I drove to Grandma's house, my house now. I sat in the driveway for a long time, looking at the garden she'd tended for decades, the porch where we'd spent summer evenings talking about everything and nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Leighton. Saw the news coverage. Your mother made the front page. Local woman arrested in elaborate real estate fraud. Thought you should know. I smiled and got out of the car. It was time to go home. The house felt different when I walked through the front door with my own key, empty, but not hollow. Quiet, but not silent. The buyers had never actually moved in, so everything was exactly as Grandma had left it. I found Emily in the kitchen, unpacking boxes of Grandma's dishes that we'd retrieved from storage. "The movers finished bringing everything back from the storage unit," she said. I put the important stuff in the living room. On the coffee table sat Grandma's jewelry box, her photo albums, and the framed picture of us from my college graduation. I picked up the graduation photo and traced the glass with my finger. "She was so proud that day," Emily said. "She told everyone at the restaurant that you were the first person in the family to graduate college. She paid for it too, worked extra shifts at the diner to cover what my scholarships didn't." My phone rang. "Leighton, I have news," he said. "The sentencing hearing is next week. The prosecutor wants to know if you plan to give a victim impact statement." "What would that involve?" You'd tell the judge how your mother's actions affected you. It can influence the length of her sentence. I looked around the living room, at all the memories Vanessa had tried to steal. Yes, I want to do that. Good. Also, Xavier's plea hearing is tomorrow. He's getting 5 years in exchange for his testimony against your mother. And Vanessa? With all the evidence we have, plus the other victims coming forward, she's looking at the full 20 years. Her lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea, but the prosecutor isn't interested. After I hung up, Emily and I spent the afternoon going through Grandma's things. In her bedroom closet, we found a box labeled "For Valeria" in her handwriting. Inside were more letters, photos of me from elementary school through college, and a small leather journal. I opened it to the first page. "My dearest granddaughter," it began. "If you're reading this, then my plan worked and you're safe in the house where you belong." Emily read over my shoulder as I flipped through pages of Grandma's thoughts about raising me, her worries about Vanessa, and her hopes for my future. One entry, dated just a month before she died, made me stop reading aloud. Valeria asked me today why I never gave up on her mother, why I kept hoping Vanessa would change. I told her that hope and preparation aren't mutually exclusive. I can hope my daughter finds her way while still protecting my granddaughter from her choices. Love doesn't mean being naive. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson and several other neighbors standing on the porch holding covered dishes. "We brought dinner," Mrs. Patterson announced when I opened the door. "Figured you might be too busy unpacking to cook." Soon the kitchen was full of neighbors, all sharing stories about Grandma and asking how I was settling in. Mr. Rodriguez mentioned that he'd seen news vans outside the courthouse that morning. "Channel 7 wants to do a story about elder fraud," he said. "Apparently your mother's case is part of a bigger investigation now." "Are you going to talk to them?" asked Mrs. Patterson. "Maybe, if it helps other families avoid what we went through." Mrs. Patterson reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver locket. "I almost forgot. Your grandmother gave me this before she went into the hospital. She said to give it to you when you came home." I opened the locket. Inside was a tiny photo of me as a child on one side and an engraving on the other. "Home is where love lives." She had that made special, Mrs. Patterson said. She wore it every day for the last year. The next week, I stood in the courthouse wearing Grandma's locket and holding the victim impact statement I'd written. Vanessa sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. When the judge called my name, I walked to the podium and looked directly at her. "Your Honor, my mother didn't just steal money from me. She tried to steal the love my grandmother gave me, the home she created for me, and the security she worked her whole life to provide. Vanessa wouldn't meet my eyes, but she failed, because my grandmother was smarter than her greed, and love is stronger than selfishness." I folded up my statement. She thought taking everything would break me. But she forgot. I was raised by a woman who always planned 2 moves ahead. The judge sentenced Vanessa to 18 years in federal prison. That evening, I sat on Grandma's porch swing with a cup of her chamomile tea, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. Emily had gone back to Portland, but she'd promised to visit for Thanksgiving. My phone buzzed with a text from Leighton. "Justice served." "How does it feel?" I typed back. "Like coming home." I opened Grandma's journal to the last entry she'd written. "Darling, revenge properly done isn't loud. It's poetic." She was right, as always. The best revenge wasn't destroying Vanessa. It was building the life she'd tried to steal, in the home she'd tried to take, surrounded by the love she'd never understood. I was exactly where I belonged.